Hi folks, Clinton here again. Just wanted to stop by and share some more good stuff with you here on YouTube and Facebook and whatnot. I know there's a lot of people out there getting a lot of good info from this and giving them some encouragement and a good little cornerstone to draw from. I would like to go into a couple things on working tube and how to exchange your heats and distribute your weights. It's going to take a little bit of time to get into this one. It might get a little heady, so bear with me. I got a little piece of glass tubing over here, something I can give you guys a reference point to. And I'm going to try to basically give you a description on what's going on inside the glass, kind of like a freeze frame kind of description of what to expect while you're heating the glass and how the glass is going to be reacting to heat. So I have this glass tube here. Now, if you notice, the glass tube has a wall thickness. That wall thickness has different spots where the mass is higher going up. Now, heat travels up, so if you pause it for a second, heat is traveling up through this section of the tube for a longer period of time than it is through these sections. So if you were to stop the piece in rotation and watch what happened to the glass, well, what's going on is the heat's retaining when you're holding it sideways, particularly, and what happens is the heat travels out this thinner section there quicker because it's just a thinner section of the glass, the heat to have to travel through the glass. So that's something to keep in mind. But also, heat is rising up, so there's a certain point where this is going to be hotter, but then that's going to change at a certain point and it's going to kind of reverse on itself. That's something that you really want to keep in mind while you're working tube and hollow forms. Another thing you want to keep in mind is how to maximize your heat retention. Now, as I just explained to you, the heat will retain itself longer through this section of the tube because it's a longer distance for that heat to travel. Now, when you shift the piece's axis this way, you have the entire distance of the tube this way for the heat to rise through. So in executing a move, you can basically transfer the heat by heating a section and then shifting it this way. So the heat retains in that wall a little bit longer if you need to execute a move. So something to keep in mind in the future, and plus just to have a kind of an understanding of what's going on and how the heat retains in the glass. Basically, like I discussed earlier in some of the earlier videos, the heat's going to hold itself longer and the larger mass longer. Well, so relates to the tube and the distance the heat has to travel. Of course, there is a little bit of surface tension loss, so there's going to be a little bit, but still there's quite a bit of heat exchange that travels up the tube in that direction. So keep that in mind. Another thing you want to keep in mind, you've got really good rotations down by now, I'm sure. If you're using these flags and synchronizing your rotations, you'll be really good at tube when the time comes, because that's what it's all about, is keeping your rods together and doing everything you do with intention and pure action, being locked on perfectly all the time, unless you want to pull it or unless you want to condense it. Now when you condense it, what you're doing is you're heating a section of the tube, a stripe basically. You know, you're limited to the width of your torch, but you're heating a stripe of heat down the tube by holding it sideways and rotating it. And as it's rotating there, it's heating a stripe, but if you hold it evenly over time, what's going to happen is it's going to heat up and it's going to start to collapse. Now how you react to it when it's at that point is what's crucial. That's why you have to go into it with intent. You have to know what you're doing with your tube. What are you turning into? Where is it going to? Because that's important. Now, if you wanted to turn this into a bubble, what you would do is start at one end and then slowly work that dome in even first, like I described in the earlier video. You work that dome in even, and once that's worked in even, and you walk that heat back evenly, and once you have that heat transferred enough this way, then what you do is you use that gravity thing, you hold that heat along this side of the tube longer, and then you give it a little puff, and what that's going to do is it's going to expand this section the bottom section here, and then you shift it this way, and you give it a puff, and it's going to expand this section, and you shift it that way, and it's going to expand this section. Now, normally, gravity is going to affect it, the glass, and it's going to make it want to fall down into itself. But when you add air to the equation, it kind of changes it a little bit. And so basically what's happening is you're heating it, and it's getting molten, but all those walls are kind of flopping around. And you got to keep those walls center as you're melting it. So you keep them center, get it hot as it's flopping around. And once it's floppy hot, that's when it's finally hot enough. You got to get it really hot. That's the key, hot. And once you get it floppy hot, then you pull it out and you center it, and then you have a couple seconds to initiate your move. That's where you're going to add air to it, or do the action to get the acquired shape that you're looking for. But ideally, you want to, when melting down a piece, you want to keep it that size all the way down until you're ready to execute the final shape, because it's easier to manage a heat in a smaller mass than it is a large one. Once it gets larger, you have to heat all those sides evenly, meaning you have to heat it and spin it faster, and you have to be able to manage it while you're spinning it that fast, which is really difficult. So be aware of all those things. Most importantly, that how the heat reacts inside the tube. This is really important for this lesson. I want you guys to understand this, and gals to understand this, that the heat is going to retain itself longer in this wall and distribute out faster in that one because of the thickness and the distance it has to travel up. So keep that in mind, really important. And also that wherever the torch exits the flame is going to be a little bit hotter. So the importance of keeping it rotating as it gets to a setting point where it's actually evenly heated, because you evenly distributed it by rotating it, and the heat's dissipating now, and it's finally neutralized enough to where you can actually initiate your motion. If you try to do it do a lot of maneuvers in the flame with air when it's super hot, it's going to go out whatever the weakest point is on it. And if that weak point happens to be right there by that flame at the time, instantly it's going to expand a little bit more than the other. But as you add air, one thing to keep in mind is it is really expanding to 12 o'clock. So if you're holding your tubulation sideways and you want to add air to it, the air is expanding and favoring a little bit towards the 12 o'clock position, what is up, right? So as you do that, you want to make an invisible marker and make let's say a cross or a star or a triangle, and then do a little bit of a puff, starting point, puff, another point, puff, another point. So that would be like a triangle, but each one of those points basically lift a little bit favoring that 12 o'clock position. And if you make it your pattern even to where it's an even pattern within that circle, then you'll have better luck getting an evenly round shape. Now, a lot of times, if you go into a single puff and you're puffing consistently in one puff, it'll expand at that point, and that one point that got expanded will keep expanding as it goes around the bend. And then by the time it comes back up to 12 o'clock position, it's already so thin, and the heat transfers up into it, and it gets even thinner. And then you got fighting it. So just to let you know, this is a really good tip. It's just kind of more about how the heat is reacting inside the tube. I know this is gonna, benefit a lot of you. The next session I'll go a little bit further, but this is about all I can get with the time I got. Hopefully I brought a little bit of awareness to you guys on this, and maybe even some of you guys out there that have been working glass for a little bit, maybe get a little different insight out on the picture. Many thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. It's been fun. I've had a lot of fun making these videos. It's always fun to explain something and share a little way that the kids can get involved in this, and glass blowers kids can get involved with this. Everybody wants to get the kid on the torch. We're like, oh, don't want to burn the kid, but hey, flashlight and get a lot of these mechanics down, and feed the brain properly. Hey, who knows what might happen. All right, y'all, be good to each other, and much love. Peace.